4.1 Research Methods. So in this assignment, I'll be talking about different scenarios within a situation and explaining all the ethical and legal issues with it, and like the punishment and like what this causes, etc. So in World War II, experiments were done on prisoners of war or selected individuals from concentration camps. These experiments could have consisted of experiments on twins, bone muscle and nerve transplants, head injury experiments, freezing experiments, malaria experiments, and high altitude experiments. The experiments would have continued until they'd finished the test and found out the result. Many people died, and many severely injured or worse, made ill. This was all the Nazis' way of kind of finding out how new things and what would work better, which obviously the way they treated the individuals wasn't really ethically or morally right, and probably would be seen as illegal now. So after this, Nuremberg created a code in 1947, and it was 10 steps to what researchers or experimenters should do whilst carrying out their experiments. So the first one is voluntary consent of the human subject is essential. So the humans should not be forced to take part in these experiments like the people from the concentration camps were, but simply have the choice of whether they want to or not. The second one was experiments should be designed to provide fruitful results for the good of society. So experiments should be done to benefit society. They shouldn't be done just for someone else's own use. They should help a range of people. Third one, experiments should be designed and based on results of animal experimentation and knowledge from previous studies. So all experiments should be done on animals first, just to see whether there's any actual extreme harm that will cause the participants. So number 4 was conduct to avoid all unnecessary mental harm. So this kind of links with point 3. So the experiment shouldn't cause any harm to the person or even the experimenter. No experiment should be proceeded with if there's a death or disabling injury. So if there's that high risk of death or a disabling injury, then the experiment shouldn't go ahead. The degree of risk taken should never exceed that determined by humanitarian importance of the problem to be solved by the experiment. So basically what this is saying is the risk should never outweigh the benefits. The benefits should always outweigh the risk. There'll obviously be a few risks in each experiment, but this should never be over the beneficial side of it. Proper preparation should be made to reduce harm to the subject. So preparation needs to be done to ensure we've got the health and safety sorted, the risk assessment, making sure that harm that could come to the participant has been decreased to the minimal. Experiments and research should be completed by qualified scientists only. So someone who's qualified to do it and knows what they're doing, not just someone off the street that don't have a clue and might cause harm. Subject has the right to end research or experiment. So unlike the participants in the Nazis experiment, they didn't have a choice of whether they did it or not, or whether they continued with it or not. Whereas it's saying here that our participants can say, oh yeah, let's carry on, or no, I don't want to do it anymore and I don't want my data to be released to anyone. And the scientists should be ready to terminate research at any time. So BASIS is a British Association of Sport and Exercise Science. It's a professional body for sport and exercise science. They give out accreditations to the researchers, making them become more reliable and have more value. BASIS have 5 main objectives: the promotion of research in sport and exercise science, the encouragement of evidence-based practices in sport and exercise science, the distribution of knowledge in sport and exercise science, the development and maintenance of high professional standards for those involved in sport and exercise. The distribution of knowledge in sport and exercise science, the development and maintenance of high professional standards within those involved in sport and exercise sciences, representation of interest of sport and exercise sciences nationally and internationally. So, two theorists did some investigations on different things. So, Zimbardo investigated how people would adapt to the role of guard and prisoner in an exercise-stimulated prison life. He was interested in finding out whether the brutality reported among guards in American prisons was down to the sadistic personalities of the guard or the environment. In order to do this, Zimbardo converted a basement in Stanford University into a mock prison. He then advertised for volunteers to participate. More than 70 applications answered the ad. These were then filtered down to interviews down to 24 male college students, which are paid $15 a day. The experiment found that changing the social roles that they were expected to play, especially in the stronger positions, the prison environment was the main factor in creating the guards' brutal behaviour. Brutal behaviour was not shown pre-experiment. The experiment showed and supported the situational explanation of behaviour. Two theories was created out of this experiment. De-individuation, this is when you become more immersed in the norms of the group, so you lose your sense of identity and personal responsibility. And learned helplessness could explain the prisoners' submission to the guards. Prisoners learned that whatever they did had little effect on what happened to them. The unpredictable decisions of the guards led to prisoners to give up responding. Ethical issues that arose were the lack of fully informed consent by participants because the researcher did not know himself what would happen, as it was unpredictable. There was no consent given by them to being arrested from home. The prisoners were not, however, told, as approval for this was delayed as given minutes before the participants agreed to participate. Prisoners were not protected from any psychological harm. This could be examples of instances of humiliation and distress. Milgram experiment was different, but kind of the same principle. So, conducted an experiment focusing on the conflict between obedience to authority and personal conscience. He examined the justifications for acts of genocide offered by those accused of World War II Nuremberg criminal trials. The experiment began in July 1961. He wanted to find out whether Germans were particularly obedient to authority figures, as this was said to be the main explanation of Nazis' killing in World War II. His aim was to find out how far people would go obeying an instruction if harm to another human being was involved. Volunteers were recruited, 40 males aged 20 to 50. At the start of the experiment, they were introduced to another participator who actually was an experimenter. They drew starts to determine roles. It was fixed, so the volunteer was always the teacher and the experimenter was always the learner. The learner was strapped to the chair with electrodes. The teacher had to read the list of words, and he then had to pair them with the word that they say. The teacher then said one of the words, and the learner had to recall it. And if the teacher, if they got it wrong, the teacher had to administer a shock every time. Every time they got it wrong, the voltage increased, starting from 15 volts all the way to 450 volts. He found that 65% of the participants continued to the highest level of 450 volts. All of the participants continued to 300 volts. Ethical issues was deception. They thought they were shocking a real person, but actually it was a fake and no one was getting shocked. Protection from physical and mental harm. The participants were released into some stressful situations. Right to withdraw. He did not allow anyone to withdraw. He used force statements to discourage them from stopping. Please continue. The experiment requires you to continue. It's absolutely essential that you continue. You have no other choice. You must go on.